I just want to skip the intro and get to the questions, John. I got some work to do here, people.
Patience, Shug, patience.
I know. I'm so excited to get to this topic. I have these questions I can't wait to get to. You guys, we have the infamous Jim Burns, who is an expert of all things marriage. He's been there, done that, made mistakes, and now he's talking about it. I am so thankful that Jim is on with us today. He wrote this wonderful book called Closer with his beautiful, adorable lover, and her name is Kathy Burns. They've been together, I believe you said 40 years, Jim. Is that right?
46 years.
40?
I know we look much younger, but 46.
Isn't that amazing? Our kids get older and we're not aging. I don't get that.
No, I know.
But friends, I'm so excited. We did a part 1. I want you to listen to it. I want you to hear his bio. He is the president of HomeWord. If you're not familiar with it, it's HOMEWORD. And he speaks to thousands of people around the world. They do virtual marriage seminars. They go to their website at homeword.com. There, I didn't get that right. .com. And I want you to look up his books. He's got Confident Parenting, The Purity Code, Creating an Intimate Marriage, Closer, and Doing Life with Your Adult Children, Keeping Your Mouth Shut, and The Doormat Out. And I've done a show earlier with Jim on that, to the praises of our listeners, and I really encourage you to listen to that show as well, as we can use them as much help as possible. But ladies, if you go to my website, HIM4Her.org, HIM, a 4, the number 4, her.org. I want you to put the word closer in the subject line, and I will send you a free book for the top 5 that do this. So get on it. Do it right away. You got to get this book. It's super good. It's a devotional, 52 devotions to draw couples together. Listen to the first show so you can hear the overview of what it's all about. But the way we left the last show, super excited, we were talking about sex, ladies. I know it's kind of surprising, but Jim has written these books on sexuality for youth. And could you just quick do another overview before we get into our questions, Jim?
Sure, absolutely. As I was married early, so I became the youth speaker at all the youth events to talk, and they'd say, well, because you're married, you can talk about sex. But what I realized was kids really needed a blunt, honest, I believe, unashamedly Christian view, especially in today's culture. But then I also realized that parents hadn't received good, positive, healthy sex education. I'll ask parents, how many of you received good, positive, healthy sex education from your parents? And 4 out of 400 will raise their hands. And what that means, though, is that studies, both liberal and conservative, Shug, say that the more positive, value-centered sex education kids receive from home, the less promiscuous and less confused they'll be. So I started creating content, and I wrote a book called The Purity Code, and it became the most often used book. I think it is translated in almost 20 languages.
Wow.
And it's on sexual integrity, and it's trying to help kids. We talk about most everything. And when you start talking about that, about 10. The reason is because they start seeing pornography at age 11, boys 10, girls 12. And so you've got to be the first one out to have those conversations.
Yeah.
Then we realized that parents were getting a late start. So we created children's books that aren't heavy duty, but it would say like God made your body. So that's the 5-year-old, God made your body. And he made boys and he made girls. And just talk about the basics things, but it gets kids feeling comfortable asking the questions, which is the next stage, 6 to 9. What every parent who has a 6 to 9-year-old, you've been a grandparent, their kids ask thousands of questions. So you answer their questions, but in that way that a 6 to 9-year-old would. You wouldn't give them the 15-year-old answer.
And where can they find those books?
Is complicated.
Where can they find those books? Stuff. Sorry, a little delay, folks. Where can our listeners find your books on that?
They can find them on Amazon. They can find them at HomeWord.com. They can get them at a bookstore. I just have been amazed at how often people have found these books and used these books.
Yeah,
the books have now sold well over 200,000 copies.
Awesome.
And 250,000, I think. And it's because it's a real need. We struck a need.
I think we need to do a show just on that, Jim.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
I think we need to do that. But we're doing today a wonderful book called Closer. I've already used some of the things out of it on my husband, and it worked. And it drew us closer, and he didn't even know. And, sometimes he'll say, are you getting that out of one of your author's books you're going to interview? I said, yeah, isn't it good? So I really want you ladies to pick this up. Closer. I mean, it doesn't matter how long you've been married. It doesn't matter what shape your marriage is in. It's just an opportunity to start a new conversation And I love it. But in between here, Jim and I were talking, and he said, ask me any question you want. So I'm going to ask a question from a female perspective as I'm reading this book. I laughed out loud, and you guys, you've got to get the book because the stories are going to just tug at your heartstrings. They're going to make you laugh, and it's going to draw you two even closer together. Don't we need new things to do besides just turning on the TV and relaxing on the sofa? So this book was set up, as Jim had mentioned, like 20 minutes a week, baby steps, start slow. And so I loved, you did a chapter called Different by Design. And you talked about men are like waffles, and women are like spaghetti. What did you mean by that, Mr. Jim?
Well, I actually copied that from a very good friend of mine, Pam Farrell, who wrote a book called Men Are Like Waffles and Women Are Like Spaghetti. And what I mean is, and this is Kathy and I to the max.
Yeah.
I can compartmentalize. So you want to talk about something important? Sure. I can compartmentalize. I'll have that. And then I'll take it back and I can be thinking about something else. Where with Kathy, her emotions kind of run all over the place. And so the spaghetti sauce just kind of blends in. So she could be talking to me about something very important about one of our kids, and yet then be frustrated that I didn't, do something with the dishes or something, and I don't know how that works. Because in my mind, let's talk about kids, then let's talk about the dishes, whatever. And so we had to learn to embrace our differences. One of our differences is money. Not like I'm a semi-detailed person. Kathy is the most detailed person. She drives me nuts. So I remember one of our first fights when we first got married was we were living in a studio apartment. So you could, from the bed, I could see every room except for the toilet, I think. And I could see part of the bathroom. Kathy is in the middle of the night. She's sitting at the kitchen table making sounds like, oh my goodness. So I said, Kathy, what's wrong? And she said, well, our checkbook is off. And I said, well, how much is it off? As I come up to find out, what is this major problem? Are we going to go broke? We were youth workers. We had no money. And she said, well, I'm down by $1.31.
Oh.
Now, any of your detailed people would go, okay, and what's the problem with that? And me, I'm like $1.31. So I did what any loving husband would do. I went back into the bedroom. I pulled $1 out of my wallet, took 31 cents and put it on the table, not super angry, but semi-harsh. And I said, here's your $1.31. Come on to bed. Well, sleeping on the couch that night for the first time, what that said was I now respect Kathy because our finances are always done perfectly because she does that detailed work. But at that time, I was like, you got to be kidding me. I'm rounding off to the nearest 100 if we had $100. So what I had to learn was I have to embrace some of the differences. Mm-hmm. And I married her for some of those strengths. And I think that's something that a lot of us don't do. We want to change our spouse to become more like us. Mm-hmm. And yet we were drawn to them maybe because they were different or they approached life differently. And so you embrace doesn't mean that you have to agree. I mean, I'm still not the detailed person that Kathy is. Yeah. I'm one who's going to come to something on time. Kathy's going to be a little bit tardy, just a little bit all the time. That's just her. Okay. So now that doesn't bother me. At one time that drove me nuts. And I think it got in the way of our intimacy, which would mean our connection.
Yeah.
Because I'm now holding contempt over something that she doesn't, see as a big deal or vice versa. So we kind of both had to do that.
As an author, I love the fact you've been there, done that. You guys have been married a long time. You wrote in this devotion book stories that keep you engaged. It's broken down, where you've got scripture, you've got a story, you've got conversation questions, and then you've got something to do to get closer together. And you don't mess around. I mean, you hit on some really, start a little softer in the middle of the beginning of the book, I noticed, but then closer toward the end of the book, it gets much more deeper and more meaty. And I thought it was fabulous. So let me ask you this question. I laughed out loud again when I was reading this. HALT, HALT. And I was laughing because this is a new reason to lose weight as I was reading this. Could you tell us what that acronym means and what you were talking about in the chapter about it?
That acronym actually comes out of the recovery movement. If you're feeling, the temptation to move into addiction or something. I use it not for that, but I use it just for life. HALT. Hungry, angry, lonely, tired. I know that if I'm not taking care of some of those basic needs in a good way, that I'm not going to be as effective in my relationship with Kathy. So what I need to do is halt. And if I'm hungry, then I need to, eat some nuts or eat a meal or whatever it is. If I'm angry, then I need to take care of that anger. And if I'm lonely, then what's causing that loneliness? And then if I'm tired, I would say for me that it's the tired. I think that we can get dangerously tired. And when we get dangerously tired, and we write about this in the book in a couple of places, but we need to halt and find rest, because what a lot of us do, and I think a lot of your listeners do, is they become overcommitted doing good things. These are not bad things. They become overcommitted and then underconnected with their spouse. So Kathy and I, if you looked at us, you'd go, God, these are busy. We're taking our kids to gymnastics and soccer and life and church and all these other things. But then, we would fall asleep at night, 6 inches apart, but miles apart from each other because we were just so exhausted.
Yeah.
So if we were going to rectify our relationship, we had to take care of, both of us had to take care of the more dangerously tired. That doesn't mean that we all move to Wyoming and live in a commune. That would be fun, maybe for a short time, but we have to figure it out here and now. And sometimes that means we have to build boundaries around our life so that we have, more connection times. And for us, we use HALT a lot. We're talking about anger, and there's another section in there on anger. But with anger, I found that for me, I had to go, okay, I just feel I was like really harsh with Kathy right then. And I'm not a harsh guy. I don't yell. I don't scream. I repress. So, my problems are just as big as anybody else. But I go, why am I angry? Well, it's a secondary emotion. See, anger is always a secondary emotion. So for me, I have to understand, why was I angry at Kathy? What caused that? And sometimes it might be loneliness, or that I was tired, or it might be that something she had said 3 weeks ago was still bugging me or whatever. And so then what I need to do is take care of that anger issue, because if I don't, anger turns into contempt, which is one of the number one reasons why people get a divorce, because they actually have contempt for each other because they haven't dealt with, their anger right.
Sure.
So HALT is good. HALT is, I actually have HALT sitting on my desk at my office, just to remind me that I need to take care of those 4 areas as well as others, but those 4 areas.
Ladies, if you're just tuning in, my name is Shug Bury, and this is HIM4Her Radio Women's Hot Topics, and we are covering the gamut today. We are talking about a book that Jim Burns had written with his lovely wife, Kathy, called Closer. Go to our website, and the first 5 people who put Closer in the subject line will get a free book from me. It will just be romantic. Make it that mandatory date night. Start out with this slow, maybe 20 minutes a week. Talk about it, massage the conversations, laugh about it, and just, watch what God does to transform your marriage. Women, we tend to be really reactional. I'm not just speaking about myself, ladies. You know what I'm talking about. Sometimes we just have that knee-jerk reaction, or that same old reaction when things are disappointing. And you mention in this book, you and your wife do, about reactions speak louder than words. And you talked about listing some items with a line down it. Would you share and expand on that a little bit more for our listeners? Well,
it seems to me, Shug, that what we have to do is understand that actually it's the reactions that get us in trouble sometimes, because we'll react because of something else. And so I think you just figure out what are the truths about your spouse, and what are the ways we can react in a positive way? What are the ways we can react in a negative way? What are the ways we do act in a negative way? What's crazy about it is, I don't want to say it's not about romance, because it is. I don't want to say it's not about a spark, but the truth is when you do the work ahead of time and you persevere and you make the commitment to make good decisions on your reactions and work on that, it's a lot better. I had a mentor in my life. His name is Neil Clark Warren. He's actually the founder of eHarmony.com.
Oh, yeah.
He's, what people don't know, he's a Christian. He's a marriage expert, and really influenced me in a big way. And one day he said to me, communication is a learned trait, Jim. It's not something that you just inherit. And that was a life changer for me, because I realized there were things that I could do by literally making a simple list. There were some things that I could do that could help me communicate more effectively to Kathy. And there were even things that I suggested to a couple, maybe 3 months ago, to start going to counseling. And the guy wrote me yesterday, texted me, and he said, "This has been great. We've learned some ways to communicate more effectively. Well, that's because they went to counseling. And the Bible says where there's no counsel, the people fall, and the multitude of counselors are a safety.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome for them that they were going to do the work to get to a place that they could actually draw closer. I think that's what, even challenging people to spend 20 minutes, most of us don't spend 20 minutes connecting on a deeper level
Mm-hmm.
in our marriages. We talk about, if we have kids at home, we talk about the kids and where we're going, we talk about the business side to the marriage.
Sure.
But when we take a little bit of time and we focus on, whatever those issues, we yearn for that. I'm a guy and I yearn for a deeper relationship with Kathy. Kathy obviously yearns for that because as a woman, she wears that on her sleeve, where me, it's a little bit harder. I got to kind of find it there.
Yeah.
But, when you have those, think about with your spouse, when you've had that good conversation, or when you've made some better decisions, there's nothing like it.
No.
And so I think we just have to work at it. And we have to work at play as well. We have to have fun. We have to, all the other things. But when it comes to, to having a good marriage, I really do think that we have to just, we kind of have a to-do list and here's what I'm going to do. I even did a thing a while back where and she didn't know it, but I decided that I was going to do a random act of kindness one day for 30 days. At least once a day
for her.
And I went about doing this. And sometimes they were so minor, but one day I brought her flowers. She goes, why didn't you bring me flowers? Birding on me. She goes, you hardly ever do this, which is kind of true, to be honest. And I said, I don't know. I just, I was at, something. I mean, I got it at a store like Ralph's grocery store, something, not a big deal. And I just said, I just wanted to say, I love you. And here you go.
Oh, see, that's so sweet. Just those little things. And, go ahead.
I wouldn't have done that if I wouldn't have written it down.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm that kind of guy. I need to cross that off my list.
A to-do list. That's right. Yeah. And, you talked also in the book about people with longevity and people that, you do have to work at your marriage, people. Yeah. And I'm going to get right to the heart of it with the few minutes we have left. You did a chapter. Now, remember, ladies, this is a devotional. There may be 2-3 pages long. That's it. Per time, a little 20-minute conversation with your spouse, with scripture, with a story that you can talk about with, and then after that, some questions for you and your spouse or couple to talk about, and then to go from there to getting closer. And so in this book, one of the chapters you titled, God Isn't Finished with You Yet. And I'm asking this question because it is toward the end of the book, and maybe this relates to you, ladies. Maybe you're thinking, I'm done with my marriage. I'm done with my man. I've had it with him. I'm not going to stay any longer. It looks greener on the other side of this fence. Why do people have such difficulty in staying married together? Why do relationships have to be so difficult for people, Jim?
Yeah. Well, a sinner marries another sinner, and then you have sinnerlings. You're going to bump into each other. Yeah. And so, life is difficult at times. And so I think it surprises us. And then you use the term, we use this grass is greener. We think it would, if I got out of this relationship, it's going to be better. But, all studies say, and there's a major study that just came out that said of the couples who are in trouble, 75% who stayed for 5 years said that their marriage was better off. So it's the issue of perseverance, sometimes. And so what I had to realize was that Kathy and I were in a couples group for years where we met every week, and it was from our church, and we loved these people, and it was great. And I used to go, I'd be frustrated with Kathy about something, our kids were younger. And then I'd go, wait, I am so grateful for her. And I would watch her, how she dealt with the other people in this group and whatnot. And I realized, it wouldn't be better. That's in my imagination. I can make it better with her, instead of having to think that it's going to be better, someplace else. And so I don't think, I think when it comes to our relationship with God, I don't think he's ever finished with us, but I don't think he's finished with our marriage either. I mean, I honestly think that I've seen some pretty crummy marriages and some pretty poor choices that people have made, some decisions that were really horrible for the marriage. And I've seen people persevere and work through it. So I think I'm not saying that every marriage is going to come at the end to have perfection. Kathy and I don't do that. I said in your previous show, we have a high maintenance marriage ourselves. But I think we have to understand that, God continues to work in us. We have to be open to that. At our church, our church that we go to, At the end of every service, we put our hands out like upward toward God. All of us do. It's like in a benediction. And he says, there's no magic to this. It's just being open to what God is, doing in your life.
Yeah.
And if you're open to that, kind of, if you feel comfortable, do that. Well, in some ways, it's the same way with our marriages. I had to quit thinking it would be better if Kathy would change and realize that when I point a finger at Kathy, there are 3 fingers pointing back at me.
Amen.
And so, if he's not, I had to understand he's not finished with our marriage yet, but he's also not finished with me.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I can become more Christ-like, if I can become more of a man of integrity, if I could become more of a man that truly would kind of desire a deeper marriage, guess what's going to happen? We're going to have a deeper marriage.
Yeah.
Because Kathy, even if she wasn't feeling that, she's going to move my direction.
But not all men feel that way, Jim. I mean, a lot of men don't feel that way, and they think, this Christianity stuff, I don't know if I believe it. What words of wisdom would you have for those gals that are out there listening?
Yeah, well, I would say to them, I understand it, and it's not easy. They chose to marry somebody that probably wasn't on the same compatibility when they got married. And if they, there's a jump start for us when we marry somebody who has the same spiritual compatibility. But if we don't, then I think we have to go, how are we going to move them? We're not going to move them by preaching and lecturing. We're going to move them by being the best person that we can be. But then also I find with men, when they're around other men who are just as cool as they are, or knows just as much about cars as they do, mm-hmm. or knows as much about sports or whatever, but also love God, that intrigues men.
Yeah.
So, I've been in a small group with incredible men. We met this morning for an hour and a half, and we've been together for 18 years. And I'm a better husband and a better father because I'm around these men. Yeah. But these men are also men's men. I mean, we go fishing, we do guy stuff. We don't talk about, I don't know anything about house and decorating of their house. It's never even entered our mind. We've been together 18 years, right? But I do know about what some of their sports passions are and what, some of these other things. Mm-hmm. At the same time, I'm drawn toward becoming, a more effective Christian and a more committed Christian because that's where they are.
You talk about that in one of your chapters on accountability.
Yeah.
And you do say women have a little easier time with accountability with other women. We talk openly, but men seem to be challenged with that accountability. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think it's pride.
Yeah.
We men want to look good around other men mm-hmm. and around other women. And so I think women actually are healthier because they're a bit more vulnerable. And accountability means you have to be vulnerable. I mean, I have to say to my men, we go through a little routine. We did it not this week, but last week, where we ask these questions. Is the work of God I'm doing destroying the work of God in me? Am I only giving Kathy and my kids my emotional scraps? Things like that. Men don't talk like that. Mm-hmm. But because we've been around together for so long, those are the answers. And we kind of rate just ourselves. We're not rating them. And one of the men had a tough couple of weeks, and just in terms of life and the family and whatnot. And so today, the first question was, hey, how are you doing? You had said you weren't doing well with, you were just giving your wife, some emotional scraps. How has that gone? He goes, oh, it's gone a lot better. Thanks mm-hmm. for asking. Yeah. And it was really good to have that conversation. It reminded me that I really need to, come to the table. And so we did this and we did that. Awesome. We held each other accountable.
Yeah. You bring up some excellent points. And ladies, he goes even to more detail in the book. It's called Closer. Jim and Kathy Burns wrote this fabulous book. You can go on Amazon, go anywhere and buy this book. It's available. It's a devotional of 52 devotions to draw couples together. I loved the book, Jim. I'm so blessed that you came on to share with us. And ladies, most of all, the most important thing is I want you to pray for your spouse. Get on your knees, surrender to God, say you love him and you created him, and just show me how to get the love thing right with my man. Invite Jesus into your heart, and he will lead you according to his promises. Jim Burns with HomeWord. I want you to go to HomeWord.com. Look him up. He's got a bunch of awesome books. Many of my friends have read them, and a shout out to my friends. You know I love you. This is Shug Bury. Over and out.